This is a good hinge as far as I can tell. It's been out for more than a year, and the Anbernic RG35XXSP has not had any widespread issues with the hinge. And the reason I'm talking about that is because today we're going to take a look at the Anbernic RGDS with a excellent hinge, in many ways better than this, and hopefully a sign that the hinge will hold up. There have been a lot of great hinges among history.
Do you know of any other famous hinges?
Yes, yeah.
The Retroid was famous for broken hinges.
Yes, I think Stonehenge has stood the test of time, and Retroid did have issues with their hinge. One of the reasons I'm talking about this is because we have a community that has been obsessed with hinge problems. And when the RGDS was first announced and tested, it got slammed in many ways. But nobody mentioned a bad hinge. And the hinge is good. It's great. It's a lot better of a hinge than what we even had with the Nintendo DSi. This has a clicky hinge, which has stood the test of time, but we have a much different hinge here. And so today we're going to do our first impressions of the Anbernic RGDS and talk about how the community has made you believe that you shouldn't like this, and how Deadfred has found this to be quite a worthy little handheld. Remember to hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss an episode. But let's dive in and talk about this RGDS and why it surprised me in some ways, even though I had the same predisposition that many of you did, that it was going to be junk. This summer, sure, you could go see that guy that flies in the pajamas with the blue and red. What's his name? But why do that? Come see the best movie this summer. Come watch Captain Inevitable, the hero who, despite knowing he could do something, always says, oh well, that's inevitable. Brought to you by Deadfred Studios. So, no, wait, that's not a real comic book character, and I don't have a studio. Hey, Deadheads, welcome back to the channel. Or welcome to the channel for the first time, new Deadheads. Today, we're going to take a look at one of 2025's most controversial handhelds, the Anbernic RGDS, a handheld that didn't get very much favorable information prior to its launch. But we're going to take it out of the box and look at it and check it out and find out, was it really dead on arrival, or is there more to this story that is yet to be told? So let's begin with what this is supposed to be. I frequently visit the Chinese forums, and I saw earlier this year from Max Zhao, one of the product leaders of Anbernic, that follow the nostalgia, follow the formula, and the fans will be happy. So we know that they've done that before. Last year's 34XX was a faithful recreation of the original. And so while this is talking about DS, it's really talking about the DSi XL, as I show here. This is the form factor that it truly matches. In fact, if you have some accessories like grips, the grip actually does fit on the RGDS. They are physically almost the exact same size, and there's a little few differences. The DS is a little more rounded in places. This is more very cut off and square. But overall, weight, size, they pretty much are the same. Now, again, they do have different hinges. And then we do have very similar screens, although the screen resolution is higher on the Anbernic DS. So while this is important because This brings a very authentic feeling to the Anbernic RGDS. When I first picked it up, I immediately felt very nostalgic, very like, yes, this feels like what I'm used to. You can see here that it's bigger than a regular DS, certainly a DS Lite, but it really brings that same sort of feeling that you have or had if you ever used the DSi XL. The buttons on this thing are the good typical Anbernic buttons that we're used to. And I'm not going to do a whole lot here because Anbernic has always provided pretty good hardware. And I think most reviewers, even with the problems that were before this released, would acknowledge that this has a very solid button. These are nice buttons that feel really great, a D-pad that feels nice, and then these sticks, which are a little controversial. Should it have them anyways or not? But I think the sticks are fine. Some people find them to be in the wrong position, lower. I think they feel good where they're at. You have your typical buttons, and then you have these two screens. And while I like the 3DS probably better than the DS or DSi, I forgot how good it is to have two exact same screens. And the Thor, which I love, doesn't have that. And so this does bring a little sense, a peripheral sense when I'm laying in bed and playing this that I did not expect. The screens on these are another contention for many. Now, old Deadfred is not a integer snob, so while I understand that this doesn't scale integer as many people had expected or want, I think these are beautiful screens. Yes, they're 640 by 480, but these 4:3 screens continue to give a great picture, especially once things are lined up and you have that sense of one continuous screen, even though it's two. The other criticism of this was the CPU. Now, this is a Rockchip. We understand Rockchip pretty well. It's a 3568, and that is not really much more impressive than the 3566 that we saw before it. While it is kind of contentious, and they did show 3DS footage, a big mistake, this is really a 3566. I did not find in my testing that it does anything much more beyond what a 3566 would do, and for that reason, it plays just like you would expect a Rockchip 3566 to do. Anbernic had a whole line of them a few years ago with items like the RG353 series. So this is a bit of a spec bump, a bit of a change, but it's not really enough to be noticeable, so everything's going to play like it does. That being said, I found that DS games played beautifully. They played great. I had no trouble playing them, holding the system, using the touchscreen, and the included stylus, which I think is a smart move, really gave this an enjoyable aspect that I didn't expect. It's one of those things where I had some expectations this would be a letdown, and then, surprise, I actually enjoyed it. But let's talk about the software experience because I also have a second RGDS here, and I have been testing Gamma OS on it. So let's talk about that in the next section. Hey guys, sorry to interrupt the video, but I wanted to take a moment to talk about today's sponsor, Amazon.com, and this awesome product they sent over for us to take a look at. They sent over a display frame where you can proudly display and store safely both your Game Boy Color or Game Boy Advance. It comes in both styles. These are specially designed compatible with Nintendo Game Boy Color or Nintendo Game Boy Advance, which holds one console and 6 cartridges in a vertical layout. As you can see, this has a solid construction, it's easy to put together, and it looks fantastic. Hit the link in the description if you'd like to pick one of these up for yourselves. We want to thank Amazon for being our partner, and back to the show. Before we hop into Gamma, I wanted to bring up something here, something that I think should be noted. I have found myself playing lots of DS stuff, lots of games that I probably would not play on other systems. It is true that so many of the catalog which is a very deep catalog of Nintendo DS stuff, is not just games, but learning, apps, storybooks, other things that you can do, like reading some of the classics. And it's an experience that is so much better on a setup that mimics the original versus something like the Mighty Odin 3, for example. The experience for DS, which is what this was set up for, is very, very good. I am enjoying playing in a way that was originally set up. And while you can do this on the Mighty Thor, with the power that it has, I really found myself focusing on 3DS or higher emulation type situations. But let's take a look at the software. And again, I do have two units here. I've got one running stock and one that's running Gamma, by the way, which is a preview for content creators. But let's hop in and take a look further at the software experience. Let's start with the stock system. So first of all, there were many issues prior to the official release. I have retail units. This is not sent to me for review. These are retail units, and they did ship with version 1.15, which fixed many of the problems that were encountered by early reviewers. Using the stock system, I found to be quite enjoyable. Over the years, Anbernic has put a lot of effort into the development of their software, and I find it to be a great balance for most people. Now, let's talk about some of the limitations here. This is Android, but it's not really full Android. It does have no access to Play Store, and this sort of CPU is not great for Android gaming. So don't expect to really do a lot here like you would on some of the other Android handhelds like the Mangmi Air X, which is going to be a much better Android handheld if you really want the Android Touch. As far as loading a game in there, putting my card in there with ROMs, and hitting the button to load NDS, it was great. It loaded up fast and quick. We got the dual screen. It's set up, ready to go. It's perfect for somebody that just wants to plug and play. Now, other systems like Game Boy Advance, those things are going to look great, and you can do dual screen in the software. They do have a physical button to switch between both screens, something that I think is a great idea and I like. And the included stylus works very good for what you're doing with it. It's really nice to use that stylus. I really like the fact that it's even color matching, with the blue one looking most impressive. Overall, the software experience does experience some lag. It also gets warm. Holding it, it warmed up quite a bit because it's pushing the CPU to do the most it can. Although they have fixed the screen refresh issues and things like that, the overall Anbernic software, while great and perfect for beginners, does lack a lot of things that I've kind of come to love. And that is where Gamma OS comes in. Now, thankfully, Gamma has provided me with a copy of a creator version that's not yet available and still being worked on. But I did take this through its paces, and let me tell you, it is great. As usual, Gamma has really upped the performance. Now, there is some caution here. Gamma has something called system-wide shaders, which I love on other handhelds. But trying the system-wide shaders on this, it slogged things down, which doesn't surprise me because shaders are sometimes intensive on the CPU. And so I didn't really find myself enjoying playing Nintendo DS with the shaders. Now, lower end systems like Game Boy and Game Boy Color, using the system-wide shader was fine. And you can still use your normal shaders through RetroArch, which are appropriate for the CPU. But the overall Gamma experience did give me a little bit better battery life. It did give me a lot of options I didn't have, and it has the standard things like Advantageous set up for you to go and add your ROMs to. So overall, I do find Gamma to be much better. And again, this is a preview version for content creators, so understand that there will be even more to it later on. So overall, we already have a custom firmware. We have a pretty good base firmware. We have a hardware that imitates the original and feels really great. And then we have this CPU issue, which gets really warm and has some limitations. But if you understand what the market is trying to do with this, where they're trying to go. They were trying to hit a $100 DS machine with dual screens. I think they nailed it. I think they got there. If your expectations are too high, of course, you're going to be disappointed. But playing through, as I show some gameplay footage here, I had a blast. There were so many games that I have not really played on DS because playing them on other emulated systems, it's not the same experience. You have to hit a button to switch screens, or you got it in there smashed tiny. It's not as fun. It really isn't the great experience. But doing it like this, like it's intended, is better. And putting it side by side with my DSi XL, it's just a better experience for me. I have functions I can do. I can pull up a guide. I can switch. I can use a clock, calendar. There's just so many things because it is Android that gives it that ability to do it. So overall, my first impressions of this are that they did what they intended to do. They brought out a $100 dual screen device that can faithfully play Nintendo DS at a pretty good level with Drastic. Now, yes, there are other Android ones that are better, and you can even use some of the included filters that are in here to make it look even better. That's another thing I found to be kind of surprising. But for me, I actually found myself gravitating towards this. In fact, so much that I think I would rather have this with the two screens than an R36S and maybe a Mangmi Air X. I know that sounds crazy because the Mangmi Air X is great, but then I go a step higher for me, and I'm really up there with the Retroids and the AYN. So for me personally, it's a little bit of a proposition like that. But let me know what you think. Did you get told that you're not supposed to like this? Were you already figuring that this was over and not going to be a good handheld? What do you think about this hinge and the weight of it? Oh, and let me talk about the battery life. The battery life is average at best because this thing does get very warm. I do wish they would have used a different CPU. I don't know if they couldn't get the H700 to play like we wanted it, because I played DS on those handhelds. But for some reason, they had to go with that. Maybe it's because Linux, and they didn't want to have Linux. I don't really know. I'd love to have Linux on this, so let's hope that more custom firmwares come. But anyways, that's sort of my overview of this. I've tested it with Gamma. I've tested it with the original. The hardware is great. It feels great. It looks like a DS. It's a faithful recreation. It's got a fun color, a couple of fun colors, and it is just as good as I'd hoped, me personally. Again, don't try 3DS. Don't play PSP on this. Don't play things like that. If you get this, get it for where it is. After all, a lot of people love the 040 from Magic X, and I'd say this is better. I'd rather spend another $30 and get this than the 040X from Magic X. So what can I say? Remember to hug your loved ones. I love your hugged ones. It's Christmas this week. Merry Christmas to all, or whatever you celebrate this week. Happy holidays. We'll see you next time. Deadfred out.